See, that doesn't answer the question. And he asked it 5 times, this atheist. 5. How do you know that God didn't come to me? How do you know? Now that how do you know is the epistemological question. What's your ground? Because what he's saying is, we just established that reasoning is our basic ground, and that in the context of reasoning, every effect has a cause. Now you need to tell me, based on that premise of reasoning, how you know that God didn't come to be. Why can't it be that something caused God? After all, we're in the cause and effect process. Now what's the answer to the how do you know question? The answer is, you only know by way of God's own revelation. God has revealed himself in such a way that this is who he is. But you can't defer to that if you've already tried to establish an authority that's outside of biblical revelation. So what do you do then in apologetics? You can still use an argument like that if you want to. Everything comes to be as a cause. But if the epistemological question comes, which it will if someone you're talking with is alert to this fact, the epistemological question comes, well, how do you know God didn't come to be? Well, I know because God has revealed himself in a particular way and told us who he is and what he's like. Now, the atheist may cry foul and say, you can't do that. I don't believe the Bible. I don't believe biblical revelation. To which you say, of course you don't. That's why you're an unbeliever. This is what, I don't believe your presuppositions either. So we've already established the fact that we're on different ground. That's why we're debating the issue. I'm not saying this because you believe it. I'm saying it because this is as a matter of fact, the case. So what it means is then, and this is so important now in its kind of, muddy, fluffy kind of postmodern context where everything, kind of devolves into a relativistic paradigm. The crucial issue in a postmodern situation, whether it's in the church or outside the church, the crucial issue and question is authority. What is the authority? Let's say in a Christian postmodern context, post-conservative, whatever it's called, the authority is the community. Truth is established by way of communities, so we're told. But then what gives that community the authority? Or is it its own authority? And what if what this community says is completely opposed, contrary to what this community says? Is that okay? See, what you wind up with is another form of relativism, except instead of individual relativism, it's group relativism. We can all be relativistic together. It's interesting, though, that even the postmoderns who believe this write books about this and send this out to a multitude of communities, and all those communities are supposed to understand the basic truth of all of this. So it's not as relativistic as they want to purport, because it can't be. You can't put your positions forward if it is that relativistic. So it's a self-refuting problem like all of philosophy. Or you can look at it this way. In the history of philosophy, you've got rationalism. Just to put it generally, rationalism, empiricism. Now, who's the first rationalist in the history of philosophy that we usually designate? It's René Descartes. What's Descartes' dictum? I think, therefore I am. Why did he do that? Because he was looking for some clear and distinct idea, as he put it, that would ground everything else that he knows. And in order to get to that, he said we've got to make everything indubitable. I mean, everything is doubtful until we can find the indubitable. So I doubt this, I doubt that, I doubt you're here, I doubt I'm in the room, I doubt the table's here. But the one thing I cannot doubt, even as I'm doubting, is that I'm doubting, or that I'm thinking. If I'm doubting, I'm thinking. So here's the indubitable. I think, therefore I am, and Descartes said, now we've got a clear and distinct idea from which we can begin to deliberate and articulate and know other things. The problem that everybody said, that the critique was, well, Descartes, how are you going to get outside of the I think? How do you ever get to the object from the subject? I mean, this is the epistemological problem. How does the subject get to the object? How does the subject know the object? The object never comes into the mind. The matter can't come into the immaterial. So how do I know this thing in terms of what it is? What bridges the gap? And that was Descartes' problem. So he was involved in this circularity. He said, well, the way you know the object is by way of God. So in his third meditation, now we're going to bring God in the picture. And people say, wait a minute, Descartes, this is the indubitable. How does God come into that indubitable? And how do you know him? Well, because the only way to ground the indubitable. But that's the indubitable. So you get into this, what the philosophers call the Cartesian circle. You can't get out of the circle. So what happens to rationalism? Out the window. Descartes tries, Leibniz does his own thing. Spinoza does his, and it's gone. So what happens? The empiricists start to come on the scene. Locke is a sort of mix, even though he's known as the first empiricist. George Berkeley's another. To be perceived as to be is to be perceived. And then you get into David Hume, who says, I'm going to be a consistent empiricist, so that knowledge is only going to be grounded empirically. That's a different thing than saying that we start with experience and knowledge, but that's a technical point. Hume's point was you can only know that which is sensed. That's all you can know. So he argues against cause and effect. Why? Because he said, show me the cause. Show it to me. I need to be able to sense cause. He says, if one guy hits a billiard ball and hits another billiard ball, that second one may move, it may not move. But even if it does move, you don't point to that billiard ball and say, see, cause. You can't see cause. It's not something sensed. So it has to be thrown out. But Hume says, we can still say it's okay by way of habit and custom, but it's not something you can know. So what happens? Empiricism, out the window. Hume's view leads to skepticism, out the window. So now the rational hasn't done it. The empirical hasn't done it. Immanuel Kant comes along. He says, I think I can mix these two. I think I can get the rational and the empirical together, and I'll find what Hume couldn't find, that is some kind of synthetic a priori. That was Kant's project in the Critique of Pure Reason. Let's find the synthetic a priori. Where is it? So that's a long, long history. But fundamentally then, the critique of Kant after he finishes is, Kant, it's back to Descartes. All you have is solipsism. All you have is a world inside your own mind that you can never show gets outside. So rationalism, empiricism, some sort of mix of the two. Philosophy has been at it 4,000 years and still can't tell you what knowledge is or how you know anything. They've been at it 4,000 years. They still can't tell you the nature of ultimate reality. Metaphysics, that's their other discipline. They've been at it 4,000 years. They still can't tell you how to designate right from wrong. Ethics. 3 areas that philosophy's been at now for a long time: metaphysics, epistemology, and ethics. They can't tell you. Nobody's concluded. Now this is it. The arguments go on. And this is why you have new movements coming up. Postmodernism is, one of the latest, and it's on its way out. What does that show you? It shows you that if you try to ground knowledge in yourself or some aspect of yourself, you will fail every time. Why? Because you can't get outside of yourself to the object that you want to know, or to ultimate reality that you want to be there, or to the nature of right and wrong. Is it right? Well, it feels right. It must be right if it feels right. That's about as good as it gets in philosophy. So what's the lesson of the history of philosophy? Knowledge, nature of reality, ethics, all have to be grounded externally. And the external grounding is in biblical revelation for the Christian. So what are we saying here? The way Van Til put it, it's the impossibility of the contrary. Here's something you already know as a Christian. At least you better know this. If you don't, today's the day to know it. Christianity's true, and everything else that opposes it is false. Okay? You know that, don't you? That's a basic. When you say, I'm a Christian, you're not saying, seems right to me. You're saying, this is the way the world